Namaste, you're on The Nation at 5. I'm Anand Narasimhan, and we start with news just coming through at this point from Iran, ladies and gentlemen, where the anti-hijab protests are now peaking. They have taken to multiple districts of Iran, and it all started, matters came to a head with the death of Mahsa Amini. But after that, day after day, the protests have spread to multiple provinces across Iran, with a lot of men also now joining Iranian women in demanding the curbing of the moral police, the atrocities committed in the name of cultural policing and moral policing, and of course, absolutely against the hijab. Now, at least 92 people have been killed as the government crackdown on these protesters only becomes far more intense, ladies and gentlemen. At various provinces, police have even resorted to firing at these protesters. 92 people so far have been killed, as the Iranian government has said that there will be hard action, and they are working using all means possible to try and quell these protests. The Iranian government believes that these protests have been fueled by the machinations of the US and its intelligence wings. But on ground, the people of Iran have had enough, especially the women. Now, Mahsa Amini, her crime was that she had worn the hijab improperly. Amini was pronounced dead on the 16th of September. Thereafter, there was also another of the protesters who was shot dead by the police. She was a 20-year-old who also died, and then the protests further intensified. We have given to understand that there are many solidarity rallies with Iranian women that have now been held across various parts of the world. We've had rallies in France, we've had rallies in Germany, we've had rallies in the United States. More and more people coming out and, of course, backing the Iranian women who are demanding equal rights and, of course, no more policing or moral policing. Now, women have had to wear hijabs and also follow the Shariat since the time Iran became an Islamic republic. That was by popular vote at that time, but with the promise that women will not be denied their rights. But largely those who belong to ethnic minorities in Iran, especially with Kurdish or Zoroastrian lineage, or leanings and beliefs, non-Muslims, they have been pushed towards following the rules under the Shariat, under this entire garb of cultural ethos and maintaining cultural parity. But there are many who are now moving back to the old religion of Persia, old religion of Iran, that is Zoroastrianism, or how we know in India as the Parsi faith. But demonstrations have been held in more than 150 cities. We've got more news coming through from Iran at this point, ladies and gentlemen, where now matters have further gone on the boil, with protesters not taking kindly to the death of a 17-year-old protester whose body has been returned by the Iranian security forces to her family after 9 days. 9 days after she went missing. She was part of a protest. Nika Shakrami, she took part in the protests. On the 20th of September, she went missing after she took part in protests in Tehran. Now her nose, she's been found with her body badly mutilated, especially her face. We're given to understand more than 29 injuries have been seen on her face itself, on her head and her face itself. They look like a blunt force being used, or a blunt force object which has been used to smash her nose, smash her face. It looks like she's been subject to very heavy attacks with a baton. Shakrami's family was threatened and told not to hold a memorial service for her. This is the situation that we have, that we are seeing multiple hits by a heavy object, possibly a baton. That's what we are given to understand how Nika Shakrami has died. It's a third female death. 92 deaths so far, but 3 shocking deaths because of police atrocities and police excesses that we are witnessing. Burzeen Wagmar, Center for Iranian Studies, SOS London, is with us this evening. Burzeen, good to have you with us after a while. This is Anand here. What is happening in Iran? Is it that there are many more people who are standing up to the orthodoxy of the Iranian government? Or are people moving back to the old religion of Iran, that is Zoroastrianism?
All 31 provinces are in revolt. And if I could update your fatalities figure, Anand, it's 133 now. And also that, yes, since yesterday we've had reports at Tehran's Sharif University of Technology, which is a very important campus and a varsity in Iran, where security forces have surrounded and started live firing on student protesters. The things are going to get out of hand even worse. The regime obviously has had to find some distraction, and they've blamed Kurds and bombed Kurdish locations in northwest Iran, as you know, which of course fits in well with a lot of patterning. Why? Because Kurds are Sunnis, and this Islamic Republic is unabashedly a 12er Shia republic, where Sunnis, not just Zoroastrians, Jews, Christians, and Baha'is are discriminated against, and where discrimination is an official fact of life, but also Sunnis. And since yesterday and over the weekend in Zahedan, which is the capital of Iran's Balochistan province, which is also Iran's largest Sunni minority province as such, and which straddles across with Pakistan's equally troubled restive Balochistan province, as you know, historically speaking, is where security forces came in and shot protesters in a mosque, Sunni worshippers in a mosque. So now they've taken it upon themselves to paint it as a revolt hatched by Sunnis, as in both Kurds and Balochis, which is completely nonsense, since the protesters which are happening in Iran, the girls and students and others that have been killed across Iranian cities, are in the main Shias who do not stand and recognize this Islamic regime, which is thoroughly discredited and illegitimate since 1979. I mean, you have a regime here which has had controlled elections, which is something of a quasi-democracy at best, a global pariah which is at odds with every neighbor in the region. Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, UAE, Bahrain works, and whose economy is moribund. And of course, the regime is a tinderbox, Anand, because what you have in Iran is a population which is between the ages of 15 and 64, the percentile range I've just mentioned.
Yes.
68.3% of Iranians are between 15 and 64. A restive population which is highly literate and skilled, standing at 96%, jobless, a ramshackle economy, hamstrung since sanctions after 2006. So you have all the ingredients here for a flare-up. And flare-ups are not new. They've been occurring in Iran since July 1999. But every time the regime has gotten away with it, and they do because, like China, they have no qualms in shooting their own population in cold blood. And may I just pause here with the Chinese factor and the Samarkand summit, if you recollect, where Xi Jinping attended among other dignitaries just in the middle of September. Well, what did Premier Xi state at that Samarkand summit after, during the closing remarks of the conference? He stated, we cannot have any more color revolutions in our region, in China's near abroad. He was referring, of course, to these orange and other revolutions which took place in the Caucasus, in Central Asia, and of course, Iran's aborted so-called Green Movement revolution of 2009, when Ahmadinejad was put into office again after a royally rigged election.
Right.
That must also be stated, that China will always support Iran on these aspects, and it is supporting Iran since 2009 with surveillance technology and deep packet information technology. That is to say, Anand, if you're sitting in Tehran at an internet cafe and attempt to log into a blocked website, which obviously is clamped down, your details can be immediately picked up by the software available to Iranian intelligence and security forces. And that software in question, you may have not attempted to find that web link, obviously because it's a blocked link, but the fact that you even typed it on the keyboard could trigger off a response and they can locate where you are. And that is the technology which China has shared with the intelligence and security services in Iran.
Right, Burzin, we've got another update because we talked about Mahsa Amini and Nika Shakrami, but there is also another story. 20-year-old Hadith Najafi was killed by the Iranian security forces. She was shot 6 times during one of the protests that she was a part of. She was actually leading these protests. A video of Najafi preparing to join a demonstration and tying her hair into a ponytail has actually gone viral. She was on the radar of security forces. In this video, she's seen tying her hair up so that before she enters, she's not having her head covered. She actually, in fact, even cut her hair in front of the security forces, and they were very, very upset, and they shot her. She was shot 6 times. So Mahsa Amini was actually a Kurdish Zoroastrian. Hadith Najafi is an Iranian Shia. And you also have Nika Shakrami, who's a 17-year-old, again a Muslim girl. So this is beyond just ethnicities, and this is beyond just faiths. And there is also this entire aspect that Iran claims 99.5% of its population is Muslim, but there are 8% Zoroastrians or Asha, those who believe in the old religion, who are also present. And if we see all the 31 provinces, if there are protests, you also see a lot of men who are coming out and backing the women in these protests. So clearly, this is not dying down, and killing people is not going to quell the uprising that we are seeing, because it's the moral policing, it's the curbs that the government is trying to impose, which people are resisting. So those who brought in an Islamic Republic via popular vote today believe that that's not the way to go forward, because under the Shah of Iran was a far more open, liberal and progressive society.
The Shah ran an autocracy like every other Middle Eastern ruler, but he was far and away more progressive than most rulers across Asia and Africa. He ran an enlightened state when all is said and done, and reflected upon after 40 years. The so-called Islamic Republic that was declared by Khomeini in April 79 was with a simple question: do you want an Islamic Republic or not? That was put on the ballot, the referendum, and obviously nobody was going to say no to that in the wake of a so-called popular revolt. So it is even questionable that the way it has been an Islamic Republic since 1979, and the regime is living on borrowed time. And it has coalesced into a national revolt, overriding any ethno-linguistic or religious confessional divisions among the population, who as a full whole are against the regime and what it stands for. And it's more than just the morality police pestering you, Anand, if you sit at a cafe, a guy and a girl, and asking, are you married, as to why you're sitting together, if you're not related, and that sort of thing. It used to be done that, and you had to produce a marriage certificate or some such ID. It's gone beyond these petty discriminations. It has become a national revolt for basic decencies in life, and that people want more than a modicum of freedom to choose to live how they wish to. Like I said, Sunnis are discriminated against in Balochistan and across Iran, officially speaking, like Kurds too, in terms of jobs, in terms of progress, advancement, social advancement as such. Shias are top dogs. They are top of the pile. And of course, Sunnis come below, and then non-Zoroastrians follow as such. With, of course, Baha'is, as you know, who are officially persecuted and murdered and have been so since the last 40 years. Iran's Baha'is are what are Pakistan's Ahmadis. It's open season to kill them any and every time, and you can get away with it because the law upholds anyone who indulges in Baha'i bloodletting. And I haven't even come to the Jews of Iran, who incidentally are the largest Jewish population outside Israel in the Middle East region, and of course who've lived perilously since 1979, and so many obviously have migrated, as have other Iranians, not just Muslims, but primarily Zoroastrians to the US and Canada, as well as Iranian Armenian Christians and Assyrian Christians, not to mention, of course, Baha'is, as I just mentioned as well.
But do you see that matters have come to a tipping point in Iran, Burzine? Because you watch sociologically what's happening in nations, do you believe Iran is at the cusp of perhaps a change in the way the nation functions? Is this international interference, as the Iranian government alleges, or is it coming from within society? Because it's getting huge amount of support across the world.
It is getting huge unofficial popular support across the world in social media, but all Western governments have not said a word about it. And the only release that Tehran has officially made is that the Germans are behind it, which is ridiculous. And for once, just this once, Anand, they have not implicated London or Washington, which they do for interference in Iranian affairs, historically speaking. And both London and Washington have very tactfully steered clear by not making a single remark, lest the regime is provoked to seize upon it and to distort what is happening and to show that it's an external imperialist interference in Iranian affairs. Everyone, absolutely everyone across Europe, Berlin, Paris, Rome, Washington, London, even Moscow, have kept quiet about it. There was a pathetic attempt, as I just mentioned last week, when someone from the official ministry said that it's the Germans behind it, which is absolutely ludicrous. Nobody's behind it. It is purely local. It's a groundswell, grassroots, popular uprising against a thoroughly discredited regime which has not represented Iranians since 1979 across the spectrum. It is a police state for all purposes and intents. That is what we are talking about. And to your question of what I see as a tipping point, I'm afraid not. I'm cynical because, like I mentioned, this regime has no qualms in shooting its population, in punching women with iron chains by sending out these Shia security thugs who are known as the volunteer force of Basij. These are just young Shia unemployed men from lower middle class working districts who are hired as hoodlums to do the regime's dirty job on motorcycles. They go around with iron chains, beating anyone and everyone up, which is what they did in 2009 too, during the Green Movement. They are out there on the streets as we speak, plus women of the morality police who go around punching and beating up these women and shoving them into police vans to be incarcerated. We see that happening too. So it is a strong state in that sense, in that it has no compunction in killing its own population, and it will continue doing so because it has gotten away with it since July 99 with every social protest that has occurred.
Well, there has to be a stop that should be put to it. 133 people dead is what you're telling us, Burzine. Thank you for joining us. We put out the facts there in these anti-hijab protests in Iran, which is also getting support globally from people. It's coming in from within society. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, it's the victims of terror in Jammu and Kashmir who speak up at the UNHRC. Stay with us.